You say time flows as if that's a physical fact. It isn't. It's a metaphor you learned so early that you stopped questioning it. Think about it. If time really flows, then answer a simple question. How fast does it flow? 1 second per second. That sounds reasonable. Until you notice it explains absolutely nothing. That's not a measurement. That's a sentence chasing its own tail. It's like saying a table is 1 table long. Language just fooled you into thinking you understood something. Physics doesn't work that way. Physics is allergic to poetic images. It doesn't care what feels natural. It only cares about what you can measure. And flowing time is not something you can measure. People love asking, what is time, really? That question sounds deep. It isn't a physics question. Physics asks something much harsher. How do you measure it? That's it. If you can't point to a physical process and say, that marks 1 second, then you don't have time. You have a story. A clock is not a mystical object. It's just something that repeats the same physical process over and over again. A swinging pendulum, a vibrating crystal, an atom oscillating between energy levels. No repetition, no clock, no seconds. Now here's the part people don't like. If absolutely nothing in the universe changes, no motion, no vibration, no decay, no interaction, then the phrase 1 second past has no meaning. Not hard to define. No meaning at all. Time is not something sitting in the universe ticking away in the background. It is not a container. It is not a river. Time is a label you attach to change. No change. No label. This is where your intuition starts to panic. Because you feel time passing. You feel boredom stretch. You feel moments fly by. You feel yourself getting older. So you assume your brain must be a pretty good clock. It isn't. Try a simple experiment. Count 60 seconds in your head. Some of you hear a voice. 1, 2, 3. Others don't hear anything at all. They see something. Numbers sliding. A bar filling up. A mental tape clicking forward. Now interrupt the wrong system. Ask the voice counters to read something out loud while counting. The count collapses, but the visual counters, they can read, sort socks, check a list, and the time keeps ticking perfectly in their heads. That should bother you, because it means what you experience as the passage of time is not a universal signal. It's a private translation scheme running inside your brain. Change the circuitry, and time feels different. That alone should tell you why physics had to throw your feelings out the window. Your brain is not a measuring instrument. It didn't evolve to track the structure of reality. It evolved to keep you alive long enough to reproduce. You don't need precision. You need good enough. Soon, later, too late. That's all survival requires. If you misjudge a second in the lab, nothing happens. If you misjudge a second when a predator is charging, you're done. So your intuition about time is optimized for survival, not truth. And that intuition comes with a built-in lie, the idea that time itself is doing something. You say time makes things happen, time ages you, time spoils milk. No, it doesn't. That's a linguistic trap. Time doesn't have hands. Doesn't reach into your fridge and sour anything. Bacteria do that. Chemical reactions do that. Entropy does that. Time is just the ruler you use to describe how fast those processes happen. Saying time caused it is like saying inches built the house. Inches didn't build anything. They just tell you where the walls are. Once you see this, something important clicks. Time isn't an actor. It's bookkeeping. It's a way of ordering events so you don't get lost. And that immediately raises a dangerous question. If time is just a way of labeling change and your brain's sense of it is unreliable, then why does time feel like it has a direction? Why does the past feel fixed and the future feel open? Why do you remember breakfast but not dinner? That's not where time lives. That's where entropy lives. And that's where things are about to get uncomfortable. You're convinced time has a direction. The past feels locked in. The future feels open. You remember yesterday, but tomorrow is blank. That feels so obvious that nobody questions it. They should, because the laws of physics mostly don't care which way time points. Film 2 planets orbiting each other and play the video backward. Nothing looks wrong. Gravity doesn't complain. Film atoms colliding. Play it backward. still valid physics. So where does this strong sense of direction come from? It's not hiding in time itself. It's hiding in probability. Take something simple, an egg. There is exactly one way for an egg to be whole. But there are millions of ways for it to be broken, cracked, smashed, splattered, powdered. When the egg falls, it doesn't choose to break. It just moves from a very special, very ordered state into one of the overwhelmingly many disordered ones. That imbalance, few ordered states, countless disordered ones, is what drives everything you call the arrow of time. This is entropy, not chaos, not decay, not some mystical force, just math. There are more ways to be messy than neat. Now notice something crucial. Entropy doesn't say the reverse is impossible. It says it's astronomically unlikely. An egg could, in principle, leap off the floor, reassemble itself, seal its shell, and land on the counter. Nothing in the microscopic laws forbids it. But the probability is so absurdly small that the universe will die of heat before you ever see it. So when you say time moves forward, what you're really saying is the universe keeps drifting toward more probable states. That's it. No flowing river, no cosmic motor, just statistics relentlessly doing their job. This is where memory enters the picture. Memory isn't stored in time. It's stored in physical records. Footprints in sand. Photographs. Neural connections in your brain. All of them are low entropy structures created as the universe moves toward higher entropy overall. You remember the past because the past left marks. The future hasn't. Not yet. That's why you can't remember tomorrow. Not because time hasn't arrived, but because there are no records of it. If the universe were in a state of maximum entropy, everything perfectly mixed, nothing changing, no gradients, there would be no memories, no clocks, no stories, no distinction between past and future. The arrow of time would vanish. This should flip something in your head. The direction you experience is not a feature of time. It's a feature of information. You are not sensing time move. You are sensing records accumulate. Your brain is a pattern-detecting machine that notices when disorder increases in specific ways. That's what gives you before and after, not time itself. Now go back to the counting experiment. The voice counters, the visual counters, both are trying to impose a clean, linear structure on something that doesn't come with one. They're building rulers inside their heads because life demands scheduling and coordination. That works locally. But physics can't afford that shortcut. Physics has to describe a universe where clocks don't agree, where order is relative, and where now refuses to sit still. And that's where things get truly uncomfortable. Because once entropy explains memory and measurement explains duration, there's no reason left to believe that the present moment is special. And that's when relativity enters the room and quietly removes the last piece of familiar ground. Up to this point, there's still a comforting assumption hiding in the background. Even if time doesn't flow, even if memory comes from entropy, even if clocks are just bookkeeping devices, you still feel like there must be a single moment called now, a global present, a shared right now, covering the whole universe. That assumption is wrong, and it doesn't fail philosophically. It fails mathematically. You probably believe a second is a second everywhere. A clock on Earth, a clock on a satellite, a clock on another planet. Tick, tock, perfect unison. It feels obvious, and it's false. Clocks do not agree. Not because they malfunction. Not because engineers messed up. They disagree because the universe is built that way. Take two identical clocks. Put one on the ground. Put the other on a fast-moving satellite. Bring them back together. They will disagree. One will have aged less. This isn't theory. This isn't interpretation. GPS satellites have to correct for this effect constantly. If they didn't, your location would drift by kilometers every day. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Time does not pass at the same rate everywhere. Not even close. The usual mistake is to think this happens because motion affects time. That's the wrong picture. Time isn't being pushed or slowed down. What's happening is much simpler and stranger. Everything in the universe is always moving through space-time at a fixed total rate. That motion gets split between space and time. If you're sitting still, almost all of that motion points through time. If you start moving through space, some of that motion gets redirected. Less motion through time means less aging. Not broken clocks, different paths. Now push this to the extreme. Light always moves at the maximum speed allowed. It uses all of its motion in space, which leaves none for time. From the photon's perspective, no ticking, no waiting, no duration at all. Emission and absorption collapse into a single event. That alone should make you suspicious of now. Here's where the real damage happens. If clocks tick differently depending on motion, then simultaneity can't be absolute. Two events you call happening at the same time won't agree for someone moving differently. Walk away fast enough, and your slice of now tilts. Events you label as future end up in someone else's present. Events you call present slide into someone else's past. There is no universal agreement, no master timestamp, no cosmic clock shouting now. This isn't a paradox, it's geometry. Spacetime doesn't come pre-sliced. Different observers carve it up differently depending on how they move. That means now is not a location in the universe. It's a viewpoint, a way of sorting events that works locally and falls apart globally. At this point, something important has quietly disappeared. The idea that the present moment is special. If there's no universal now, then there's no physical reason to privilege this moment over any other. The equations don't. They treat past, present, and future as coordinates in the same structure. Nothing in the math says this slice is real, the others aren't. That distinction only exists in your head. And once that sinks in, there's only one picture left that keeps everything consistent. Not because it's comforting, not because it's philosophical, because every other picture breaks. Time stops behaving like a moving spotlight and starts behaving like a dimension, like space. All events laid out, all moments included. The present isn't where reality exists. It's where you happen to be looking. And that leads, inevitably, to a conclusion people love to call philosophy only because they don't like what the equations are saying. The block universe doesn't appear as an idea. It appears as a necessity. At this point, the word block universe usually triggers resistance. It sounds abstract. It sounds philosophical. It sounds like something invented to make physics weird on purpose. That reaction is understandable. It's also misplaced because the block universe doesn't enter the picture as an idea. It enters as a consequence. Once clocks disagree, once now depends on motion, once the equations stop favoring any moment in time, there is no coherent way left to say that only the present exists. That rule was never written into physics. It was smuggled in by intuition. Think about how equations describe the world. They don't evolve reality moment by moment the way a story unfolds. They describe relationships between events in space-time. An interaction here, an interaction there, connected by rules. The math doesn't erase yesterday when it calculates today. Past events are still there in the structure. So are future ones. Not as predictions, as coordinates. That's not philosophy. That's how the calculation works. A useful way to think about this is version history. Every state of the system exists in the log. Not because you can access all of them, and not because you can edit them, but because removing them would break consistency. The present isn't special in the database. It's just the version currently being executed. Nothing more. This is where misunderstandings usually explode. So let's be precise. This does not mean time travel. It does not mean you can revisit the past. It does not mean you can rewrite anything. A map containing all locations doesn't let you teleport. A complete history doesn't grant control over it. The block universe describes structure, not freedom. Another mistake is to hear the future exists and translate that into fate. That's a category error. Physics doesn't talk about destiny. It talks about correlations. The equations don't say events are inevitable in the way a story ending is inevitable. They say that events are related across space-time in specific ways. Your choices are part of that structure, not exceptions to it, not victims of it. They don't disappear just because the timeline is complete. Now step back and notice something subtle. Nothing about this picture changes how you live your life. You still wait. You still decide. You still plan. You still boil eggs and miss trains. The weirdness doesn't show up because it lives under the hood. Just like relativity. You don't feel time dilation when you walk across the room, but satellites do. And engineers account for it, whether it feels real or not. The mistake is thinking that reality has to match your internal narration. It doesn't. Your sense of flow, your sense of now, your sense of direction, those are tools. They work well enough locally, but they are not the architecture of the universe. They're shortcuts. Once you stop mistaking language for structure, everything snaps into place. Time doesn't flow. It doesn't push. It doesn't act. Events are ordered. Records accumulate. Clocks disagree. That's the whole story. The past isn't gone. The future isn't waiting. They're simply not where you're standing. Physics never promised comfort. It promised consistency. And the universe keeps that promise even when intuition fails, especially when intuition fails.